What does the future hold for a person who is dyslexic? Can you have dreams, and can they actually come true? Can you harbor out-of-this-world dreams? And can you, for example, want to fly high in the sky and float and safely look down at Earth? Well, this was a dyslexic's long-time wish. And it actually came true. Who can that be? Think about this, and you will guess correctly. Who will be the first civilian in space? A dyslexic, of course, Sir Richard Branson. On Sunday, July 11th, 2021, Sir Richard boldly flew into space. As he often says, if I hadn't been dyslexic, I would never have done it. And this is a quote from the second edition of Overcoming Dyslexia on page 522. Is Sir Richard Branson a rare exception? Or is he one of the large and growing group of highly successful dyslexic adults? As so many others, dyslexic young men and women dream of the future. Perhaps the dream is to be a writer, maybe a business guru. What about a doctor or a scientist? Are these realistic goals for dyslexic? The answer is a resounding yes. Perched atop lists of the best in virtually every profession are dyslexics, including writers John Irving, John Grisham, and children's authors Dav Pilkey and Patricia Polocco. Athletes, ice hockey player Brent Sopel, Olympic ice skating champion Merrill Davis. Business leaders, Charles Schwab, economist Diane Swonk, entrepreneur Sir Richard Branson. Doctors, my good friend cardiac surgeon Toby Cosgrove, psychiatrist Stuart Yudofsky, anesthesiologist Fred Rumberg, scientists, Nobel laureate molecular biologist Carol Greider, renowned geneticist George Church, lawyers, my good friend too, David Boies and Gary Cohn, public servants, California Governor Gavin Newsom, New York State Assemblyman Bobby Carroll, people in entertainment, super agent Ari Emanuel, producer Brian Grazer, actors Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom, director Steven Spielberg. Each of these people experienced early difficulties involving reading. So the question is, how do you go from here, a dyslexic student entering high school, to there? The answer? It begins with a plan. Think about this. Where would your plan begin? What specific areas would your plan focus on? And here you can see in this figure a high school plan. Entering 9th grade, graduating high school, entering college, and college graduation. And I'll talk about what are the components of the plan. Just as when you want to build a house, you have to start with the plan and then go on to build a strong foundation. In making a successful journey from high school to college and a career, each dyslexic student has to make a plan that best suits his or her specific needs, skills, and hopes for the future. You may ask, when should planning for college begin? Planning for college begins years before the application process kicks in. It should start in 9th grade, and no later than 10th grade. Consider the planning process from the perspective of three broad areas. Academics, including developing resiliency and the level of confidence and knowledge of dyslexia to comfortably and effectively self-advocate. Organizational skills, including actions and activities to undertake to sharpen a student's skills and attitude. Personal focus, especially on the inner self and possible conditions that might impact and indeed impinge on optimal learning. Let's focus on academics. Recommended academic-related considerations and goals. Increasing independence. Once your dyslexic child is in high school, gradually encourage him to assume more responsibility for increasing independence in decision-making, the sort he will require in college. His increased autonomy will reflect a growing base of solid knowledge of his dyslexia. Together, along with thinking about her dyslexia, she should think about her interests, her areas of enjoyment, her ideal future career, and the implications of each. Developing self-confidence leading to self-advocacy. As a dyslexic student gets to know who he is, feels comfortable in his own skin, knows that while he may not be a fast reader or a super speller, he is bright and has much to offer the world. He grows in his self-confidence, his independence, and his ability to self-advocate. Having endured much during their school years, dyslexics develop resilience that many of their classmates who sailed through school often lack. It can emerge in many forms, as Richard Branson experienced in fulfilling his long-held dream of going to space. The positive role of resilience in a dyslexic person's life was crystallized by Adam, a young neurosurgery resident. Bennett, the co-founder and co-director of the Yale Center for Dyslexia and Creativity, and I were just closing the last slide of a PowerPoint lecture on dyslexia one sunny afternoon in Woods Hole, Massachusetts, when one of the attendees shyly came up to the podium. He wanted us to know that he was dyslexic and that without question, he was confident in succeeding. As Adam explained, a neurosurgical residency, which requires 8 very intense years, has the highest dropout rate in all of medicine. Adam shook his head and uttered with calm assurance, "Not me. I know I will be there to receive my certificate as a graduate of the neurosurgical residency program." Why? As a dyslexic, I have met and had to conquer and climb over so many obstacles put in my way. I have developed what I can only describe as resolute resilience, and honestly, nothing stands in my way now. If I take on something, I will succeed. It's a good feeling. I know you have an interesting story about your admission to the University of Michigan. You presented a seemingly contradictory portrait of low standardized test scores together with perfect grades. And though both your parents were alumni, you were rejected at first. Tell us about that and your experience once you had matriculated.
So, there's so many layers to that, because I wanted to apply to different schools and my father would only pay for one, and that was the University of Michigan. So I only applied to the University of Michigan. And when I got the rejection that I didn't meet the criteria, and it was a contingency, wasn't actually, it was a rejection. I never told my father. And because I knew he would be devastated by that. And I also knew there was no other option for me to go to school unless I got into Michigan. And so in what I would later learn is pretty much someone who's dyslexic and had to overcome a lot of obstacles in life. I just wouldn't stop until they let me in. And I just kept calling and saying, I've got the grades. I'm going to commit to this. it's really important to me. I have an extraordinary love for Michigan, and I would not let this admissions persons go. I mean, I was like a dog with a bone. And finally, she said, okay, we'll let you in. And, but they were sort of reluctant on it. And there were sort of some boundaries around that. And that was, I finally could say I'm going to Michigan to my dad, but I never even let him know what I struggled through to get in the door, let alone, that they didn't want me. The one school that my parents had gone to that I was born at on my mom's spring break didn't want me.